Hi there, Wes Gow here with Cardinal Coaching Solutions. Hi, thanks for tuning in. If you're watching this video, just know that I'm also capturing it on a podcast that I might share as well. Hey, I want to share with you a little bit more about my story. One of the things that I'm doing in 2020 is I'm reaching out to friends and connections to have as many of these kinds of conversations as I can, particularly around our cycles of learning. Let me explain a little bit more about that. Joseph Campbell was the first one, I believe he's the first one, or at least he's credited with this phrase, the hero's journey. If you've ever heard anything about that, it's a really interesting thread that you can find lots of stuff about on the internet, lots of helpful YouTube videos as well. But basically, Joseph Campbell identified these common components to all of the great stories, all of the great mythical legends in literature. And so there are different variations of that cycle. If you imagine just a clock face or a circle, a wheel, I think he has probably more than a dozen phases. I've whittled that down to about 6 or 7 for what I want to use here in this conversation. So like I said, I'm reaching out to folks who might be interested in sharing a conversation with me about this topic. And so I want to take the lead and share a little bit about mine, a particular cycle that I went through, because I do believe that we're all somewhere in that cycle. And furthermore, I believe it can be so helpful to have a narrative that helps you get oriented to what is happening, what is going on right now. So I'm going to start here. If we think of our perfect circle, our clock face, 12 o'clock noon is present day, the status quo. For me, I'm going to rewind 4 years ago. Present day at that time I was in an industry, a nonprofit industry, for about 7 years up to that point in various leadership roles. I'd worked for 2 different organizations here locally in Virginia Beach. Great organizations. Love them, love the people. And the first step in this cycle of learning in this hero's journey is there's a call. There's some kind of a call. And that call is to leave the known, to leave the comfortable, to leave the predictable, and step out into basically the exact opposite of all of those. Step into the unknown, the unpredictable, the uncommon. And that's what I did. That's what I knew that I had to do. I had probably ignored that call. I had felt that call, that urging, that longing for a little while by that point. And finally, in 2016, I answered it and I stepped out, and it was unknown. Just to give you a little more context, the space that I was in, the industry that I was in, is pretty insulated, pretty isolated even in some ways. And so a lot of the skills that are required to be in that space don't necessarily readily transfer, or I would say they don't immediately transfer into roles and positions and jobs outside of that industry. So here I am. I stepped into this call, and I didn't have, by the way, I had none of this language at that time. Okay. All I knew was I just don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And so I stepped out. And another component, if we're moving around clockwise on our circle, you come to the first threshold. There are 2 thresholds. The first one is leaving behind and stepping into unknown. And that's what I did. The next phase is often in stories. There are guides that will manifest. There are people who will either become present in your life or people who are already present who can help you stay somewhat grounded. And so there were folks like that in my life. I want to shout out to Randy, folks like Randy and Nick, who helped me more than you guys realize. And then if 12 o'clock is present day, 6 o'clock, 6 p.m., the exact opposite of that, the very lowest point of our circle is the dark night. A lot of times the hero, the heroine, the main character, they are actually in a dark place. It's physically dark. Think of Gandalf in the Mines of Moria, who has to face the demon. Frodo's in the mines. Harry Potter winds up in a cave. And something must be faced. Some evil, some antithesis to good, something stands in the way. It may even be internal. It may be a belief that has to be faced. And so when I left that industry and stepped out in an unknown, it was 18 months to 2 years of dark night. It was unbelievably deconstructive. I was deconstructed. My belief system was deconstructed. My whole narrative of life was shredded. My identity was almost systematically torn apart. It was brutal. I was depressed. I was anxious, panic attacks. It was brutal on our marriage. We had 2 young kids, but at that time they were probably 4 and 2. So we have all of that that's going on in life. It was brutal. It was brutal. In fact, I won't draw this out anymore, but there was actually one particular night that I'm happy to share more about this in a conversation. But it was a mysterious, haunting, spiritual encounter of hopelessness that I've never experienced anything like that. And in all the stories, there's a coming out of the dark night. There's the transformation. There is the becoming. Somebody becomes. Bruce Wayne becomes Batman. Harry Potter becomes the wizard. Luke becomes the Jedi. It's not a singular moment. It's often a slow progression, but there's becoming. And then there's the second threshold, which is leaving that space, leaving that dark night, leaving that cave where you've been transformed, and now stepping back out into your world. And our last phase is the return, often stepping out from that cave, from that darkness, from that cycle of learning. There's a return to your normal life, oftentimes, to the present day that you left. You are different. You are transformed. Something is new, some new learning. For me, it was discovering coaching. It was embarking on this journey into certification and qualification into this space. So I'm still here, I still live in the same house, same town, and yet I'm fundamentally different, and I'm looking to serve people in a fundamentally different way, a way that I would have never discovered had I not gone through that. So that's a little bit of my story. Of course, we can unpack that a lot more. I'm happy to do that with a call with you, but I wanted to take the lead and share some of my story because I want to hear about yours. Where are you on this cycle? What might you be working through? So thanks so much for listening. And if you'd like to share in this conversation, then shoot me an email, Wes, W-E-S, @cardinalcoachingsolutions.com. Thanks so much for listening.